The Galactic Confederation's Grand Assembly Hall rose 200 meters from floor to ceiling, its crystalline walls displaying the real-time positions of over 20,000 starships, protecting the united species of the known universe. Representatives from 87 spacefaring civilizations gathered around the central platform, where Earth's delegation stood, looking remarkably small beneath the towering architecture. Commander Alina Reyes straightened her midnight blue uniform, the silver Earth insignia catching the light as she stepped forward. At 43, her weathered face and calculating eyes reflected decades of military service, yet nothing in her career had prepared her for the diplomatic complexities of first contact, and now formal alliance. Esteemed representatives of the Confederation, she began, her voice carrying through the perfect acoustics. On behalf of humanity, I present our contribution to the Mutual Defense Pact. A holographic projection materialized above the platform. A single ship. The silence lasted precisely 3 seconds before the laughter began. Admiral Excel Thorax of the Ardorian Empire, his blue-scaled skin stretching as his 4 mandibles clicked in amusement, approached the platform. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, he physically dominated the human delegation. "Commander," he said, translator implants converting his chittering language to standard Confederation speech. Perhaps something was lost in translation. "We requested your species' defense fleet." Alina nodded politely. "This is our contribution." The UEA's terminus. The hologram rotated, displaying the vessel's specifications. At 2 kilometers long, the terminus was admittedly impressive for a newly spacefaring species, but compared to the Ardorian battle groups of 500 ships or the Verulian armadas numbering in the thousands, it seemed almost childishly inadequate. "One ship," a Talaxian representative whispered loudly enough for all to hear. "They'd bring 1 ship to defend an entire sector." Alina's expression remained neutral. The terminus represents the culmination of Earth's military philosophy and technological achievement. We believe it will prove sufficient. Admiral Excel Thorax's laughter resonated through the chamber. "Sufficient. Your single vessel would be overwhelmed in seconds by even a minor incursion. The Dreth swarms would consider it an appetizer." The hologram expanded, showing the terminus in comparison to standard Confederation vessels. It was larger, certainly, but not by enough to justify such confidence. "With respect, Admiral," Alina replied, "we request assignment to the perimeter zone. Our ship is designed for frontline engagement." The request silenced even the most amused delegates. The perimeter zone, the dangerous border region, where Dreth incursions were most common and casualties highest. Ambassador Orcs of the Verulian technocracy leaned forward. "You wish to position your only contribution in the most contested region of space. This would be suicide." "We're confident in our capabilities," Alina stated simply. The Confederation Council exchanged glances. High Counselor Zhen of the Meridian Collective raised a 6-fingered hand. "The request is granted. The human vessel will patrol Sector 9 of the perimeter zone, effective immediately." As the assembly dispersed, Admiral Excel Thorax approached Alina privately. "Your bravery borders on madness, Commander. I've witnessed 23 species join the Confederation. Most overestimate their capabilities. None have done so this dramatically." Alina met his compound eyes without flinching. "Perhaps we simply measure capability differently, Admiral." After the Ardorian departed, Lieutenant Commander Jackson moved to Alina's side. They took the bait, exactly as predicted. Alina nodded, allowing herself a small smile. "Phase 1 complete. Send word to Earth. We're deploying to the perimeter. Tell Director Cheng it's time to activate the Wraith protocols." As they left the chamber, the holographic display of the terminus still hovered above the platform. A single ship against the galaxy, exactly as humanity had planned. Chief Engineer Talek Vorn floated through the cavernous engine room of the UES terminus, his anti-gravity harness compensating for the ship's slightly lower artificial gravity. As the Confederation's most decorated technical genius, he had examined vessels from all 87 member species, but nothing had prepared him for the contradictions of human engineering. "These power couplings are deliberately inefficient," he muttered, his six-fingered hand running specialized scanning equipment over a junction box. The readouts made no sense, energy flowing through pathways that should have overloaded hours ago. His Verulian assistant, Nyx, hovered nearby, recording everything. "Perhaps their understanding of physics is primitive," she suggested. Talek frowned. "No, this is intentional." He gestured to a plasma conduit. "Look at the routing. They're bleeding energy, but it's controlled. Precise." After 4 hours of inspection, they approached a massive bulkhead door marked Auxiliary Systems. According to the schematics, this section comprised nearly 40% of the vessel's interior. Talek's credentials, sufficient to access any system on any Confederation vessel, triggered no response from the door's security panel. "Another dead end," Nyx sighed. "That's the 14th restricted area." A voice behind them caused both engineers to startle. "Finding everything you need, sir." Specialist Zhang had appeared silently, wearing a standard Earth uniform with an unusual neural interface band visible at her temple. Talek hadn't heard her approach, despite Verulian hearing being 3 times more sensitive than human standard. "Your vessel's systems are unorthodox," Talek said diplomatically, "and much of the ship remains inaccessible to our inspection team." Zhang smiled. "Commander Rais anticipated your curiosity. She's requested your presence on the command deck." 3 decks and 2 security checkpoints later, Talek found himself facing the human commander. Belina Rais sat reviewing holographic displays that vanished the moment he entered. "Chief Engineer Vorn, your reputation precedes you," she said, gesturing to a seat across from her. "I understand you have questions." Talek remained standing. "Your weapon systems are severely underpowered for a vessel of this size. Your engine efficiency is borderline primitive, yet you've requested assignment to the most dangerous sector in Confederation space." Commander Rais nodded to Specialist Zhang, who presented Talek with a steaming cup of dark liquid. "Earth coffee," Rais explained, "a cultural tradition when discussing important matters." The aroma sensors in Talek's nasal cavities detected complex organic compounds. He took a cautious sip, finding the bitter flavor surprisingly pleasant. "Your sensors detected unusual energy signatures behind our secured bulkheads," Rais stated rather than asked. "Elements that shouldn't exist in stable form at standard temperatures." Talek stiffened. His scans had been conducted discreetly. "How did you?" "The same technology that prevents you from seeing what's behind those doors allows us to monitor your attempts to look," she replied without hostility. "Some questions are better left unasked until you're ready for answers that will change everything you believe about physics." The Verulian placed his cup down carefully. "The Confederation has a right to understand the capabilities of its member vessels." "And you will," Rais assured him, "when the time is right." As Talek and Nyx departed the terminus, he activated the 5 microscopic monitoring devices he'd managed to place throughout the vessel. The feed showed normal activity for precisely 3 minutes and 27 seconds before dissolving into static. In his shuttle, Talek composed his report to the Confederation Security Council. "The humans are concealing technology beyond our current understanding. Recommend immediate reassignment of the terminus away from the perimeter zone until full disclosure is provided." He transmitted the message, unaware that Commander Rais was reading it simultaneously on her private terminal. She turned to Lieutenant Commander Jackson. "Right on schedule. The Confederation will demand answers now." Jackson nodded. "And when the Dreth attack before those answers come." "Then," Rais said, her eyes reflecting the starlight through the viewport, "we give them a demonstration instead." Alarms shattered the artificial calm of the terminus's bridge. Lieutenant Kira Nomura's hands flew across the tactical display as 7 crystalline formations materialized from subspace. "Dreth War Cluster," she announced, voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. 7 vessels, Harbinger class. Detection range, 18 million kilometers, and closing. Commander Reyes nodded, unsurprised. For 3 weeks, the Terminus had patrolled the perimeter zone without incident, long enough for the Confederation's attention to wander and security protocols to relax. Now the Dreth had finally arrived, right on schedule. Confederation Monitoring Station, Epsilon is hailing us. Communications Officer Chen reported. They're transmitting retreat coordinates and dispatching reinforcements. The main view screen displayed the approaching Dreth formation. Unlike conventional ships, Dreth vessels resembled massive crystalline organisms, because they were. Each semi-organic construct housed thousands of the insectoid species, their hive-mind intelligence making them devastatingly effective in combat. Silence that channel, Reyes ordered. Lieutenant Commander Jackson, initiate Nightfall Protocol. All Wraith pilots to interface chambers. The bridge crew exchanged knowing glances. Throughout the ship, 128 men and women moved with practiced efficiency toward sealed chambers that officially didn't exist. "Ma'am," Namura said hesitantly, "Confederation combat records show no successful engagements against Dreth clusters of this size, with fewer than 20 vessels." Reyes smiled. "The Confederation hasn't seen what we can do." The view screen shifted to display the Epsilon monitoring station. A panicked Meridian officer was practically vibrating with anxiety. "Human vessel, you must retreat immediately. Your ship cannot possibly." Terminus acknowledging. Reyes interrupted. "We are engaging the Dreth. Maintain your position and observe." The Meridian's compound eyes widened in horror. "This is suicide. The reinforcement fleet is still 17 minutes from arrival." "That won't be necessary." Terminus out. The ship accelerated toward the Dreth formation, its conventional engines pushing to full capacity. To Confederation observers, it appeared to be a suicidal charge. One ship against 7 apex predators of the galaxy. In the Terminus' recently expanded medical bay, Dr. Ibarra finished his final checks on the neural interface systems. All Wraith pilots showing green status, he reported over the comm. Symbiotic links stable across all units. Jackson settled into his neural command chair on the bridge, a specialized interface crown lowering onto his head. "Nightfall Protocol activated," he announced as microscopic filaments established direct connection with his cerebral cortex. Neural handshake established with all Wraith units. Deployment in 3, 2, 1. From Epsilon Station, the Meridian observer watched in fascination as the Terminus appeared to shimmer slightly. What happened next defied all sensor readings. The human vessel seemed to fragment into multiple shadow-like entities that moved with impossible speed and coordination. "What are we seeing?" demanded the station commander, an Ardorian lieutenant. "Unknown," replied the sensor officer. "Our systems can't track them properly. They're moving between normal space and something else." The Dreth responded with typical hive mind efficiency, their crystalline vessels pulsing with energy as they fired devastatingly accurate particle beams at empty space. Somehow, the human shadows anticipated every attack before it happened, countering with precisely targeted strikes against previously unknown Dreth weak points. In her neural interface chamber aboard the Terminus, Lieutenant Sarah Chen felt her consciousness expand beyond her physical body, merging with her AI counterpart. Together, they became something new, neither fully human nor machine, but a perfect synthesis with reaction times measured in microseconds and intuitive leaps no computer could match. Through her Wraith unit, she danced around a Dreth vessel 3 times her size, identifying structural vulnerabilities no Confederation analysis had ever detected. 2 precise strikes later, the crystalline ship shattered into 1,000 fragments. Throughout the battle zone, other Wraith pilots executed similarly impossible maneuvers. What appeared as chaos to observers followed a complex, adaptive strategy beyond conventional military doctrine. 17 minutes after engagement, the Confederation reinforcement fleet arrived to find an impossible scene. 7 destroyed Dreth vessels, and the UES Terminus hovering at the edge of the battlefield, its hull showing minimal damage. The only transmission from Commander Reyes. Perimeter sector secured. Resuming patrol route. No assistance required. Admiral Xel-4X's shuttle docked with the Terminus 3 days after the Dreth engagement. The Ardorian commander led a delegation of 11 high-ranking Confederation officials, their expressions ranging from skepticism to barely concealed awe. The Confederation Security Council has authorized a full inspection, he announced as Commander Reyes greeted them in the docking bay. After what happened with the Dreth, you understand our concerns. Reyes nodded. We expected nothing less. Admiral, we're prepared to share some of our technology. The emphasis on some wasn't lost on Xel-4X. You no longer have the luxury of secrets, Commander. Not after your ship performed maneuvers that violated known physics. Follow me, Reyes replied simply. The delegation was escorted through corridors that Chief Engineer Vorn recognized from his previous inspection. But this time, they approached one of the sealed bulkheads marked Auxiliary Systems. Reyes pressed her palm against a scanner, then leaned forward for retinal verification. What you're about to see represents 2 centuries of human research into human-machine integration, she explained as the massive door slid open. Technology we developed in isolation before first contact. Beyond the threshold lay a vast chamber filled with 128 pod-like structures, each connected to an intricate network of circuitry and neural interfaces. Most were empty, but in several, human crew members were being disconnected from complex systems by medical staff. Meet the heart of our defense strategy, Reyes said, leading them to a pod where Lieutenant Sarah Chen was being assisted by Dr. Abara. Each Wraith unit combines a human pilot with artificial intelligence in perfect neural symbiosis. Chen looked exhausted but satisfied as neural filaments retracted from her flight suit. She nodded respectfully to the delegation. Lieutenant Chen destroyed 2 Dreth vessels during the engagement, Reyes continued. Would you explain how, Lieutenant? Chen stepped forward, still adjusting to being fully back in her own body. The Wraith system creates a direct neural link between human consciousness and an artificial intelligence matrix. Neither entity is dominant. We become a third thing altogether. She approached a holographic display station and activated a replay of the battle. The delegates watched as her Wraith unit, a sleek, shadow-like craft barely visible to conventional sensors, executed maneuvers that should have been impossible. The AI provides computational speed and multiple targeting solutions, Chen explained, manipulating the tactical display with subtle hand gestures. I provide intuition, creativity, and moral judgment. The artificial intelligence can process sensor data and calculate trajectories faster than any organic brain, but it can't improvise like a human. Admiral Xel-4X studied the display with his compound eyes. The Dreth are renowned for their hive-mind tactical superiority. How did you counter their coordination? By creating something similar but better, Chen replied. 128 Wraith units, each with the precision of a machine and the intuition of a human, all connected through a secure quantum network. Talek Vorn finally understood the energy readings he detected. The power requirements must be enormous. Reyes nodded. That's why our conventional systems appeared inefficient during your inspection. They're secondary to the Wraith power grid. The Telexian representative, her feathered crest rippling with agitation, stepped forward. Why conceal such technology from your allies? Would you have believed us without demonstration? Reyes asked. More importantly, would you have trusted us with it? She gestured around the chamber. We don't build fleets because we learned long ago that the ideal ratio is 1 human mind to 1 AI system, housed within a singular, perfectly designed deployment platform. Admiral Xel-4X's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. You've potentially changed the nature of warfare itself. That was never our intention, Reyes said quietly. But we will defend ourselves, and now our allies, with every advantage at our disposal. As the delegation departed, Xel-4X lingered behind. You could have shared this technology during the alliance negotiations. Reyes met his gaze steadily. Some gifts need to be earned. Admiral, trust works both ways. The Confederation Military Council chambers fell silent as Commander Reyes took the central podium. 3 weeks after the Dreth encounter, the humans had been summoned to explain themselves fully. Representatives from all 87 species filled the tiered seating, their attention focused on the lone human figure. Distinguished counselors, Reyes began, you've invited me here because you believe our approach to warfare is either reckless or deceptive. I'm here to demonstrate that it's neither. It's simply different. She activated the chamber's holographic system, displaying Earth's historical timeline. You've mistaken our strategy for weakness when it's precisely the opposite. The display shifted through centuries of human conflicts, ancient naval battles, aerial dogfights, ground warfare across continents, and finally, early space skirmishes. Throughout our history, decisive victories rarely came from numerical superiority alone. She continued, highlighting specific engagements where smaller, specialized forces defeated much larger armies. The Confederation approach to warfare emphasizes overwhelming force, thousands of vessels operating in rigid formations with standardized capabilities. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably at this direct assessment of their military doctrine. We discovered the true potential lay not in replacing human judgment with artificial intelligence, but in creating a perfect synthesis between them. Reyes expanded the hologram to show the neural interface technology at the heart of the Wraith system. Machines calculate, humans intuit. Neither alone can achieve what we accomplish together. The Verulian representative rose. The resources required for each of your Wraith units could build 5 conventional warships. How do you justify such inefficiency? Reyes smiled. Is it inefficient if one Wraith unit can defeat 15 conventional vessels? Our approach emphasizes quality over quantity, specialization over standardization, and synthesis over segregation. She tapped her command tablet, transforming the chamber into a virtual battlefield. To demonstrate, I've prepared a simulation. Admiral XL4X, would you honor us by participating? The Ardorian commander, surprised at being singled out, rose from his seat. What do you propose, Commander? A simple tactical exercise. You'll command a virtual fleet of 30 Confederation vessels according to standard doctrine. Lieutenant Chen will operate a single Wraith unit. Murmurs spread through the chamber as Chen stepped forward, a neural interface band visible at her temple. Admiral XL4X took position at the tactical console, his 4 arms perfectly suited to managing multiple ship formations. Begin simulation, Reyes announced. The chamber watched as XL4X deployed his fleet in textbook-perfect formations, establishing overlapping fields of fire and layered defenses. His tactics were flawless by Confederation standards and completely predictable to human analysis. Chen, meanwhile, stood motionless except for subtle eye movements, her consciousness partly merged with the AI tactical system. Her single Wraith unit executed maneuvers that seemed randomly chaotic at first, but gradually revealed a pattern too complex for conventional battle computers to anticipate. One by one, XL4X's ships were neutralized as Chen exploited microscopic gaps in his defenses, created diversions that drew out his reserves, and employed tactics no strategic AI would generate. After 7 minutes, the simulation ended. Chen's Wraith unit remained operational. 28 of XL4X's 30 ships had been disabled. The Ardorian's mandibles clicked in agitation. You knew my tactical approach before we began. No, Chen replied quietly. But humans have been predicting each other's strategies for millennia. The Wraith system combines that intuition with computational analysis. Your tactics were optimal by conventional standards, but conventional is predictable. Reyes returned to the podium. This is why we need only one ship. Quality transcends quantity when that quality represents the perfect marriage of human intuition and computational precision. The council chambers erupted in debate. Some representatives demanded immediate access to human neural interface technology. Others called for restrictions on Wraith deployment, citing ethical concerns about machine-organic integration. Amidst the chaos, Admiral Xel-Thorax approached Reyes privately. "Your demonstration was convincing, Commander, but you've made many nervous today." "Good," Reyes replied. "Complacency is the enemy of innovation, and innovation is what we'll need for what's coming." "The Dreth." She nodded. "That was just a scouting party. Their main fleet is already mobilizing." Confederation Central Command erupted into chaos as sensor arrays across 3 sectors simultaneously detected massive subspace distortions. Admiral Zentar, the elderly Meridian Supreme Commander, stared at the tactical display with all 4 of his eyes widened in disbelief. 50 Dreth-high ships, the sensor officer reported, voice quavering. Multiple vector approach. They're bypassing our outer defense perimeters using some kind of enhanced phase shift technology. Zenthar's tendrils quivered as he processed the implications. Deploy the fleet according to Defense Protocol Omega. All available vessels to form at rally points in sectors 7 through 12. The massive command center sprang into frenzied activity as nearly 2,000 Confederation ships received their deployment orders. On the central holographic display, small blue icons representing Allied vessels moved into predetermined defensive formations. "The human ship terminus is requesting assignment," a communications officer announced. Admiral Xel-Thorax, who had been appointed tactical coordinator, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Position them in supporting role behind the Ardorian Heavy Destroyer Group. They're too valuable to risk in direct confrontation." Despite his first-hand experience with Wraith capabilities, Confederation High Command remained skeptical of entrusting critical battlefield positions to a single vessel, regardless of its unique technology. Aboard the Terminus, Commander Reyes reviewed their assigned position, with thinly veiled frustration. "Supporting role," she muttered, "behind the main engagement line." Lieutenant Commander Jackson shook his head. "They still don't understand what we bring to the fight." "They will," Reyes replied. "Prepare all WR-8th pilots for simultaneous deployment. We'll follow their orders, initially." The battle began with devastating efficiency as the Dreth employed unprecedented tactics. Their crystalline vessels moved in complex, shifting formations that seemed to anticipate the Confederation's standard response patterns. Conventional battle computers failed to predict their movements, leaving defensive formations vulnerable to precisely targeted strikes. From his command platform, Admiral Xel-Thorax watched in growing horror as ship after ship registered critical damage or complete destruction. The Dreth had clearly analyzed Confederation tactical doctrine and developed perfect counters. 300 vessels lost in the first hour, a tactical officer reported grimly. "Minimal Dreth casualties. They're adapting faster than our battle computers can respond." Xel-Thorax made a decision that would later be recorded as the turning point of the conflict. He opened a priority channel to the Terminus. "Commander Reyes," he said, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Your approach has merit. How would you engage this threat?" Reyes's response came instantly, as if she'd been waiting for precisely this question. "Give us operational freedom and a clear communication channel to all fleet commanders." After a brief consultation with High Command, Xel-Thorax granted the request. What followed shocked every Confederation tactical officer observing the battle. Reyes deployed all 128 Wraith units in what appeared to be a scattered, disorganized pattern. Each unit moved independently, seemingly without coordination or central command. The Dreth, detecting this apparent chaos, immediately moved to capitalize on the perceived weakness. It was exactly what Reyes had anticipated. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, leading Alpha Squadron of 16 Wraith units, executed a series of maneuvers that defied conventional spaceflight parameters. Her squadron appeared to phase in and out of normal space, bypassing Dreth defensive fields and striking at critical junction points identified through combined human intuition and AI analysis. Throughout the battlefield, other Wraith squadrons implemented similarly unpredictable tactics. Each unit operated with localized autonomy, while following a brilliantly adaptive master strategy. The Dreth hive mind, accustomed to predictable enemy responses, found itself unable to establish coherent countermeasures against an enemy that refused to follow logical patterns. "They're retreating," reported a stunned Talaxian sensor officer after 3 hours of engagement. 15 Dreth ships destroyed, 23 heavily damaged. The rest are withdrawing to Sector 14. In the aftermath, a small Dreth scout vessel was captured intact, an unprecedented achievement. Through specialized translation technology, the Confederation security team managed to extract limited communication from the captured Dreth commander. "They think differently," the translator relayed as the insectoid alien transmitted its pheromone-based language, "not as individuals, not as a hive, but something in between that we have no defense against. The human system confuses us." The Confederation War Council fell silent as Commander Reyes stepped forward. 1 week after repelling the Dreth attack, representatives from all 87 species had gathered to determine their next move. The atmosphere was tense but respectful. Humanity had earned that much. "Our victory was significant but temporary," Reyes began, activating the central holographic display. "The Dreth will return with adapted tactics and greater numbers." The display showed the known territory of the Dreth Collective, a sprawling region of space encompassing hundreds of star systems. At its center pulsed a single red point. "Intelligence gathered from the captured Dreth scout confirms what we suspected," she continued. "Their entire species operates under the coordination of a central neural node, essentially a biological supercomputer that maintains their hive-mind connection across vast distances." Admiral Xel Thorax leaned forward. "You're suggesting a strike at their command center." "Precisely," Reyes confirmed. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Such a strategy had been considered and rejected countless times over the centuries. The Dreth home system was protected by the entirety of their forces, thousands of vessels, automated defenses, and spatial distortion fields. Conventional assault would require sacrificing thousands of ships and millions of lives with minimal chance of success, Reyes acknowledged. "We propose an alternative approach." Lieutenant Commander Jackson stepped to her side, activating a small device on his wrist. His body momentarily shimmered with translucent energy, becoming partially transparent before resolidifying. Several alien representatives gasped or recoiled. "Phase shift technology," Jackson explained, his voice echoing strangely while partially out of phase. "The terminus can temporarily exist between dimensional states, becoming essentially invisible and intangible to conventional matter and energy." Admiral Zenthar rose from his seat, membranous wings fluttering in agitation. "Such technology violates fundamental laws of physics as we understand them." "As you understand them," Reyes corrected gently. "Earth discovered the principles centuries ago during quantum entanglement experiments. We kept it secret, developing the technology in isolation until perfect safety protocols were established." She manipulated the holographic display, showing a simulation of the terminus approaching the Dreth neural node while phase shifted. The terminus can shift long enough to penetrate Dreth defenses, deliver a precision strike against their neural node, and exit before they realize what happened. Counselor Vex of the Talaxian Federation chittered nervously. "If this technology exists, why not equip all ships with it? Why maintain the pretense of conventional warfare at all?" "Because it's dangerous," Jackson replied soberly. "Phase shifting creates fundamental instabilities in the fabric of space-time. Multiple vessels attempting it simultaneously could tear reality apart. We use it sparingly and with extreme caution." The council chambers erupted in heated debate. Some representatives demanded the humans share their phase shift technology immediately. Others called for its prohibition as too dangerous to exist at all. High Counselor Zhen raised her six-fingered hand for silence. "The ethical and technological implications require careful consideration. However, our immediate concern is the Dreth threat." Reyes nodded. "We don't offer this lightly. The mission carries extreme risk, even for us. Phase shifting the entire terminus pushes the technology to its limits. There's significant chance of catastrophic failure. Yet you volunteer nonetheless." Jen observed. We do. Admiral Xel-Thorax's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. The Confederation has fought the Dreth for generations without victory. If the humans believe they can end this threat permanently, I support their attempt. After hours of debate, approval came with a stark warning from the Ardorian High Command. If you succeed, humanity will gain the Confederation's eternal gratitude. If you fail or misuse this technology, Earth will face consequences beyond imagination. As the council dispersed, Admiral Xel-Thorax approached Reyes privately. You've hidden much from us, Commander. What else don't we know about humanity? Reyes met his compound eyes steadily. Enough to be both your greatest ally and your worst nightmare, Admiral. Fortunately for everyone, we prefer the former. Aboard the Terminus, preparation for the mission began immediately. Wraith pilots underwent specialized training for phase-shifted combat, while engineers reinforced critical systems against dimensional stress. Mission countdown begins in 12 hours, Reyes announced to her crew. What we attempt has never been done before. Jackson nodded grimly. That's becoming something of a human specialty. For 7 agonizing days, the Confederation received no word from the Terminus after it vanished into phase space en route to the Dreth homeworld. War preparations continued across all 87 member species, with most believing the human ship lost to the dimensional void. Only Admiral Xel-Thorax maintained faith, ordering long-range sensors focused on the Dreth system despite ridicule from his peers. The humans have surprised us at every turn, he told his doubtful staff. Let us not underestimate them again. On the 8th day, those sensors detected an unprecedented energy surge from the heart of Dreth space, a massive quantum disruption centered on their neural node. Hours later, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Dreth vessels had suddenly stopped responding to commands, drifting powerless in space or executing emergency protocols to land on the nearest habitable surface. The hive mind had gone silent. As Confederation forces cautiously moved to secure abandoned Dreth positions, a spatial distortion appeared at the edge of monitored space. The Terminus materialized, its hull showing evidence of incredible stress. Massive fractures ran along the port side, and portions of the outer armor had been completely sheared away, exposing internal systems to vacuum. Medical teams and engineering crews rushed aboard to find the human crew exhausted but triumphant. In the command center, Commander Reyes sat in her captain's chair, left arm ending in a neural prosthetic interface where flesh had once been. Admiral Xel-Thorax was the first Confederation official to board. You succeeded, he stated simply, mandibles clicking in what humans had learned was admiration. Reyes nodded, fatigue evident in her eyes. At a cost. 37 Wraith pilots lost when our phase shift system partially failed during escape. We nearly didn't make it back. In the ship's medical bay, Lieutenant Sarah Chen recounted the mission to assembled Confederation officials. We materialized directly inside the neural node chamber, she explained, her voice hoarse from the neural feedback she'd endured. Their defenses were designed to repel conventional attacks from outside, not an enemy appearing in their most secure facility. The tactical data shared with Confederation intelligence revealed the full story. Specialized Wraith units had interfaced directly with the Dreth neural matrix, uploading a cascade virus that rewrote the hive programming. Rather than destroying the Dreth, the humans had effectively severed their hive connection, transforming them from a single collective consciousness into billions of individual beings. They'll recover eventually, Dr. Ibarra explained to the astonished Confederation medical team. But as individuals, not a hive. Our xenopsychologists predict they'll develop a society more compatible with galactic cooperation. In the aftermath, humanity received unprecedented honors from the Confederation. A new position was created, Strategic Innovation Director, with Reyes as its first appointee. More significantly, species throughout the galaxy began sending their best minds to Earth for training in human-AI integration techniques. The Terminus, too damaged for immediate repair, was preserved as a monument in orbit around the Confederation capital world. In its place, Earth revealed production had already begun on 3 new vessels of similar design, each incorporating improvements based on their experiences. Admiral Excel 4X, now humanity's staunchest ally, summarized the lesson in his official report to the Confederation High Council. What appears as weakness may conceal unprecedented strength. The humans didn't build a fleet because they had transcended the very concept of conventional warfare. They brought one ship because that's all they needed, a vessel not just of war, but of revolution and thought itself. Commander Reyes, addressing the first class of multi-species Wraith pilot candidates 6 months later, offered a simpler explanation. Throughout human history, we learned one consistent lesson. It's not the size of your force that matters, but how you use it. We brought one ship to the Confederation because we'd learned to make one ship enough. As the new generation of Wraith pilots, human and alien alike, began their training, the question that had once seemed so mockingly obvious now carried profound respect. Only one ship? Yes. And that was all humanity needed to change the galaxy forever.